You know, I have this strange feeling that somehow I've stepped 2 years back into the past. I never thought I was going to make another video about Yandere Simulator, Yandere Dev, or anything even loosely related to this situation ever again. When I was getting my start as a commentator, I milked this situation dry. I made videos daily about it. I am still to this day embarrassed by the kind of content I put out back then. I milked this situation like the milk was made of diamonds, and diamonds in this analogy taste really good. And then I grew up. I still get people to this day tell me that they liked that kind of content or that they subscribed from that, and honestly, why? However, thank you for subscribing back then. You could also subscribe now if you would like to subscribe by clicking the button, because I won't get another opportunity in this video to say it. Anyway, I'll presume based on how many people subscribe from those videos and how many people messaged me asking me to cover this situation who I haven't spoken to in years, that you know what Yandere Simulator is. The game that's been in development hell for 10 years about yandere girls, panty shots, and everything else an almost 40-year-old weird anime fan could conjure up. When Yandere Simulator first When Yandere Simulator first started development years ago, people actually kind of enjoyed the concept. It was fun and creative, which had people intrigued, and a lot of creators made videos playing the game for a bit of fun. However, in recent years, the developer, YandereDev, has found himself embroiled in all the controversy you could imagine. From the dreadful development of his game, dubbed Spaghetti Code, which left many developers absolutely dumbfounded, to his inappropriate comments and actions, this man has an online history of controversy like no other this side of Christian. And while he has found himself in controversy for similar things to what's being discussed in this video, when he made his comments about a license, which would be given to people who passed a test to prove that they were at an age of maturity. I don't even think I need to point out how insane that is. I truly did not expect to hear allegations that this 35-year-old man had been speaking inappropriately with a 16-year-old child. This information became public on September the 25th, when a video by the YouTube channel AliMCC was publicized called "The New Allegations and Evidence Against Yandere Dev." This video included multiple calls and several chat messages between the alleged victim and Yandere Dev, where conversations would go from Yandere Dev making inappropriate comments about how the minor was cute or otherwise attractive, to Snapchat messages that were allegedly sent by Yandere Dev that imply he would like to receive explicit material from said minor, and that he would keep said act a secret.
Man, you're so cute. It's because you keep being cute. If you don't want to be called cute, then stop being so cute. It's simple logic.
Having heard that audio, I think you understand how severe this situation actually is. So I think it's important that we make it clear that Yandere Dev was aware of the minor in question's age. There are two conversations in specific that make this very clear. One where Yandere Dev has a conversation with the minor, and they bring up how old they were when Yandere Simulator started, and another where he brings up the idea of OnlyFans to them, and specifically notes, when you turn 18.
Because you have been working on the game since I was 7?
I've been working on it for, I've been working on it since 2014.
Oh yeah, I was 7. I was 7. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird to process that.
There's this one really important thing to remember, and that's that all the money I get is donations from people who want to support me. And if I start working less, then they will think, oh, he's not working, he's lazy, I should not support this guy.
Why can't you start OnlyFans?
Okay, let's just hypothetically imagine I have an OnlyFans. Now, what do I post on the OnlyFans? You mean like just naked pictures of me? I don't think I'm good looking enough for anyone to want to subscribe to my OnlyFans.
Like,
when you turn 18, are you going to start an OnlyFans?
God, no.
Well, how can you recommend that someone else do it if you wouldn't even be able to do it yourself?
From this point on, truly hits the fan. Yandere Dev starts having very inappropriate conversations with this minor that range from conversations about bust sizes to conversations about whether the minor in question would like to take his Even if we're playing devil's advocate here and saying that he was entirely joking, this was not an appropriate conversation to have between a 35-year-old man and a 16-year-old. I don't feel like that needs to be said, but I know some people really like to come to the defense of this guy.
What if I told you I'm only interested in girls with double D breasts? Anything less than that is just not attractive.
Well, I mean, like, that's your preference, but do you understand how cup sizes work?
No. Big as a girl's head. I want them big as a girl's head.
I have what are considered, these are A cups, isn't that crazy?
Because you're so skinny?
Yep.
So it's like the ratio of the bust compared to, yeah, okay. Yeah, you're very skinny and that's kind of hot. Sorry, am I a bad guy for saying that? Should I go die?
No. Wait, hold on, did you ever answer that question? I asked you if you were...
Yeah, then my phone rang. Very conveniently, I had to go flee to answer the phone call. Here's a question for you. What makes you think it's possible that I'm...
You asked me that, and I gave an answer. What was it?
You're like, maybe you were shy in college, and you haven't had any time to meet people because of Yandere Sim.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm a... Does that make me a pathetic loser?
Why would it make you a pathetic loser?
It's like, oh, this guy has no riz. He can't get any girl to sleep with him. Pathetic. Maidenless. No bitches?
Like, I'm half hoping you are, half hoping you're not. Because, like, if you're not, then, like, good for you, you have. But if you are, like,
You want to steal my first time? Well, I'm not very experienced with ladies.
I can tell. No.
Wow, okay, bye.
You just don't have any time. It was not like that. You just don't have any time.
Wow, so mean. You're such a bully.
I'm unable to do this weekly challenge in SAS. It is so hard.
What's the weekly challenge? Don't wait.
Oh my god!
I honestly think that even if this was where all of the allegations ended, this would still be enough proof to completely ruin this man's career. It's very hard to argue that you're learning and changing when you're a 35-year-old man. You have had the opportunity to learn and change, you're just a creep. But obviously, this isn't where the allegations end, not even close. We have so much more to go over, and to be quite frank with you, I'm not even sure where to begin. To preface this next clip, I think a few things need to be made clear. I do believe that the victim went into this situation with the intent of publicizing this evidence against Yandere Dev. That's based on the fact that they were recording all of these calls and collecting proof that these calls were from the real Yandere Dev account from the start. I'm sorry, but the argument that he says funny things in call and that's why all these calls were recorded doesn't really cut it with me. And the kind of leading questions they were presenting towards him that I feel were loaded with the intent to set him up to basically ruin his entire career himself. However, I don't think that makes Yandere Dev any less guilty by any means, and I am appreciative that the questions were posed this way because it really does dig his own grave for him. My concern for how this information was publicized goes out of the window as soon as there's proof that this information is actually true. The severity of the behaviors exhibited by Yandere Dev here takes precedence over my concern for anything else.
So, I know that the official ages are 18, but, like, is it high school?
No, it's a post-high school academy.
Huh. So how old is everyone?
Everyone's 18.
Just like 18 or like 18 plus?
Everyone in the... Well, I mean, there's like adults, like the teachers are older than 18. The headmaster is like 60, but all the students are 18.
Oh, that's weird. I feel like high school age makes more sense.
It would make more sense, but then everyone would complain, oh my god, the characters are under 18, so I have to contrive a story that makes them over 18. Or 18.
Because everyone gets so mad about kids. Because, like, you can't minors. I mean, you can't disagree with that without sounding like a creep. There's nothing I can really say about that.
Mother Nature minors. Puberty starts to give breasts and wide hips to children before they turn 18. It's not like, you know, a person does it to a child. The child's own body does it to themselves. It's not like an adult can go to a child and cast a magic spell that gives them breasts. Haha, I've you. I gave you breasts. And the child is like, no. Now, the child just does it. The child's body does it automatically. A child gradually becomes an adult over time because of puberty.
Yeah,
It's
I get what you're saying.
doing it. What, does it sound silly when I phrase it like that?
It sounded really silly.
But it's true, though.
To add supplemental context to this conversation, I would like to discuss YandereDev's past comments about the age of and a license. I'm not going to go over the whole of that situation because there's a lot to cover. Instead, I'm just going to read directly from his debunk page where he addresses allegations against himself, and I think you will understand the concern behind YandereDev's comments here. Not that I'm saying it wasn't already concerning, but that it's about to get a lot worse. In response to the claim, YandereDev wants to abolish the age of consent and replace it with a license. He says, "One day in 2014, I received hate mail from someone who was offended by Yandere Simulator. Because I felt attacked, I started arguing with the person. They said, 'Your game is creepy because the characters are underage.' And I responded, 'The age of is different in every country, so does that mean the game is only creepy in some countries?' The reason why I responded this way is because I felt like I was slapping them with a witty comeback. I wanted to be contrarian towards them purely for the sake of being contrarian. They had a rebuttal, so I responded with a rebuttal of my own, and we kept going back and forth. I focused exclusively on trying to contradict everything they said. Eventually, they started talking about predatory behavior. In order to continue pursuing the sensation of haha I slapped them with an epic comeback, I had to start contradicting whatever they said about that, which led to me making a series of statements that looked like I was defending predators. For example, if they said predators are evil, I would respond by saying predatory behavior is involuntary, just like a mental illness or orientation, because I only cared about one thing, contradicting everything they said in order to feel like I had won the argument. Eventually, the conversation somehow turned to the topic of abolishing the age of. This was the first time in the conversation that I actually felt like we had arrived at an intellectually engaging subject. Some people mentally develop at different speeds than other people. This means that one age of doesn't work for everyone. For example, some people might be mentally developed enough at 18, but other people might not be mentally developed enough until 19 or 20. For this reason, the concept of an age of is slightly flawed. It was an interesting hypothetical thought experiment, so I actually put a bit of thought into it. If the age of had to be replaced by something else, what would it be replaced with? Instead of selecting an arbitrary number to permit people, what else could you do? Well, it would be convenient if there was a machine you could place on your head that would scan your brain and determine your current level of mental development. If the machine was 100% accurate, then it would be able to objectively determine whether or not a person is ready. The way I phrased this was really stupid. I said something like, what if there was a test, and if you pass it, you get a license? Wouldn't that be better than having an age of? The person I was arguing with was mortified and asked, what if a 14-year-old passed this test? Would you permit them? It was an invalid question because no 14-year-old could possibly mentally develop fast enough to pass the brain scan test. It simply would never happen, but because I was in contrarian mode and just wanted to contradict everything this person said, I simply responded, yeah, if the test is designed to prove something objectively true, then it must be objectively true. Throughout this entire explanation, it's obvious that YandereDev is watering down the severity of what he said and retroactively adding context or reasoning behind what he said to make it seem less concerning. But I think, given the current situation, we need to revisit weird comments like this one and maybe take another look at it. There is so much wrong here, there, and everywhere else surrounding YandereDev that I don't think it can go understated. This is where the story gets so much worse though, as YandereDev then catches wind of the fact a video about this situation is being made due to some TikToks made by one of the victim's friends. He would then immediately reach out to said victim and ask them to lie about the situation. He would say, I'm going to delete Snapchat now. There is something I want you to do, but I know you probably won't do it. Please say, I lied. None of it was real. I asked my friend to use a YandereDev AI voice changer. This is not actually his voice. Please don't actually release any video. The evidence is all fake. The victim since alleged that the dev was also threatening to sue them as well. At this point, the victim would then publicize more Snapchat messages between them and YandereDev that seemed to get a lot more explicit. To preface this, I cannot directly confirm that these Snapchats really are YandereDev. However, at this point in time, I believe it is entirely reasonable to believe these screenshots. The first of these screenshots would be a conversation between YandereDev and the victim, where YandereDev would discuss and was trying to figure out how to present this in a way where it wasn't with him saying, if I say, wait 2 years and try again, does it technically count as? And even later saying, but if I say, whoa, 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 don't say that until you're 18, the subtle change in phrasing makes it not. He would then continue in this second screenshot to discuss the idea of receiving images from this minor, saying that it would be super erotic seeing the minor dress and undress. With the minor saying, I'm just not sure what kind of stuff to send. Content like that is illegal and all that, but if you don't care, that's fine. This would continue into this following conversation where the victim says they don't have any problem with sharing images, but if anyone found out they would, suggesting this idea that being a year and a half away from 18 is basically the same thing as being 18, which I think the law would heavily disagree with. But apparently Yandere Dev does agree, because he says that there's a very small difference between a 17 and 18-year-old, and it's basically identical. They would continue this conversation until Yandere Dev would say, I know about all of that, but my personal opinion doesn't matter. Whether or not I think it's immoral, it is still illegal for me to be having a conversation like this with someone under 18. The victim would go on to respond saying, no one in law enforcement would find out though, and Yandere Dev would respond saying, yeah, I know, but if you ever decide that Yandere Dev guy, you could anonymously release screenshots of some statement I made towards you. But it's what's said next that really solidifies just how bad all of this is. With him continuing on, discussing this idea that he couldn't visit them on the other side of the country right now because he has to concentrate on the game so much, so the only thing he could really get out of that conversation would be explicit material. With the minor responding, which I'll provide if you promise to keep it a secret, and Yandere Dev responding, oh, I would keep it a secret. After Yandere Dev became aware that a video was being made, he would have a conversation with the minor where he would go as far as to coerce them to not make this situation public. And honestly, my stomach starts to churn reading this chat because it is so obvious how disingenuous and manipulative he is being. The minor would directly say to him, this relationship was totally not okay, I'm 16, and he responded by saying, I am so lonely and miserable and depressed and unhappy. Of course, the one time a girl is actually nice to me, I get attached. You were so fun and funny and charismatic, it made me want to keep talking. I am not an evil predator who goes around committing vile acts. I am a lonely, vulnerable man who made the mistake of being flirty to a girl who was a bit too young. The phrase, a bit too young, is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Yandere Dev would say that he has been panicking for 16 hours now, and that he's in a full panic attack mode over this. And the victim would say, I don't know what to do. And Yandere Dev would respond, disappoint the people, since destroying a man's life is not worth it. The minor would go on to say, I feel like I'm exposing a boyfriend, but you're 35. Yandere Dev would respond, please spare my life. I haven't done anything so bad that I deserve to lose everything, absolutely everything forever. He continues on saying, this should be an easy call, and then guilt trips the victim by saying, this is actually the worst thing that has ever happened in my life. Nothing else compares, while the victim is apologizing to him. In response to this apology, he would say, if you were genuinely sorry, you'd save me. You are the only human on earth who can save me. Please do not bring this much harm into someone's life to entertain some people on the internet. This next part is actually sickening. The victim would discuss this idea that they might end up traumatized over this situation, and Yandere Dev would respond saying, you are the one traumatizing me. This here is trauma. This is abuse. This is power imbalance. I am being emotionally abused by you. This conversation would continue on, and it is very gross, but I'm only going to skip to the highlight here, which is Yandere Dev guiding the victim on what they should say to the person making the video so that the person wouldn't make the video. With Yandere Dev saying, you can say, I know what the laws say, but I don't want to risk it. It's my decision as the victim. And even, it's my recording, so it's my decision to make, not yours. You can be forceful with him, make it clear that your word is final and he does not have a say in the matter. The victim would respond, I don't like this. This is textbook. And Yandere Dev would respond, after this experience, I will never want to talk to a minor for the rest of my life. It is anti. I am trying to convince a minor to stop being entangled with my life, so this is really as far as possible from. I cannot express clearly enough how awful this is, how awful this entire conversation is. And this conversation would lead to the victim allegedly striking down the video about this situation as soon as it became public. Initially, people theorized that YandereDev had taken down the video under the victim's legal name. However, based on the victim's own testimony on a live stream, it would appear that they were the one behind the takedown, and we aren't sure how involved YandereDev was in that decision.
Yes, I did copyright strike the video because they were my recordings that I took, so I have full legal right to do that.
Since YandereDev discussed all of this with the victim's opinion on the situation seems to have changed. They've started explaining that their friend convinced them that what YandereDev was doing was wrong, and that they don't think there was anything wrong with it, and that people are blowing the situation out of proportion and lying about it and taking information out of context. But I think the context speaks for itself. I don't think any of what YandereDev did here was appropriate, and I don't think there is a justification for it.
To an extent, I can understand it's hard to come to terms with a person you idolize doing something awful, but I can confirm Alex's admission to these texts and calls, and I hope in the near future he will do the right thing and make his admission public as well. And unfortunately, with Jane being a huge fan of Alex and being greatly infatuated with him, his coercion worked, and Jane wanted to back out and retract her allegations. She even posted a comment on another creator's TikTok video stating that he convinced her that ruining his career was bad. And really, I think that says it all right there. Following this, I was unsure if I would be posting this video at all, because from the beginning I made it a priority for her to maintain full control of how her story is told at all times. That's something I pride myself on in the very few situations like this I've been involved in the past, is always putting the victim first. And so I told her throughout this entire process that if she ever changed her mind and didn't want her story to be shared, I would respect her decision. But that was if she came to that conclusion on her own, and sadly, I hadn't anticipated if someone she alleged was actively abusing her for months would push her into silence and not seeking proper help that she had so passionately wanted throughout this entire process. Not just for herself, but for other alleged victims of Alex as well, who have been in contact towards the end of the original video being put together. At this point, after discussing with Jane's friend, the alleged victims, and others involved, we were unfortunately put into a situation where we had to decide between Jane's wishes and the wishes of all the other victims who also couldn't speak out for themselves, and were begging us to post the video with the accompanying evidence to expose Alex for what he's allegedly done to numerous young girls. We were forced to decide if, at this point, this project had come so far that it had to leave the victim's hands, meaning Jane, and enter the public responsibility. Because without the evidence, and especially with Alex convincing her to backtrack her previous accusations, he would face no accountability, and we had to consider if this just meant he would become better at hiding potential future abuse. Would we just have to sit around and wait until this happened again to another girl? If we were to do nothing and this whole situation blows over and someone else did end up becoming victimized, we would feel at least partially responsible for not taking action when we had the chance to prevent it from ever happening. As I mentioned at the beginning, I've spoken with someone associated with Alex who wanted to learn more about the situation, being just as concerned for Jane's safety and well-being as the rest of us. And of course, being someone who is far closer to Alex than I will ever be, we had some differences of opinion, but there were also many things we agreed on. And while they don't agree with this video moving forward, they understand why those of us involved feel that it's a necessity. It was a very respectful and productive conversation, and I would like to sincerely thank this person for being cordial and reaching out to me. Unsurprisingly, though, this person denies that Alex ever had any malicious or illegal intentions with Jane. Though I feel with what Alex has said in these voice calls and text messages, the best case scenario, he led this girl on to allow her to view that they were in a romantic relationship and didn't shut it down despite having many opportunities to do so over the past several months. And worst case scenario, he's done some very illegal things. And with those options, I am not taking any chances, because I personally don't trust Alex enough to give him the benefit of the doubt. Even if Jane is lying about certain things, which I'm not saying she is at all, he still allowed these interactions to happen. Jane is a child, and he is the idolized public figure with millions of followers. She's compared coming forward with her allegations to a breakup with a boyfriend. So obviously she feels hurt and affected in some type of way because he allowed it to get there. So after much discussion with everyone involved, it was a unanimous decision that we'd gotten the ball rolling on this video and there was no turning back, especially with details and portions of the evidence already made public. A video with the evidence would be posted in some form. However, I went back and modified Jane's audio clips to disguise her voice, as that hadn't been done for the original video, and we decided not to include her testimony given during our interview, which had been retracted in its entirety. It felt like a decent compromise with wanting to bring the evidence to light while also acknowledging Jane's desire to now be completely uninvolved. Since her retraction, she's been doing a lot to try to diminish the abuse, all for Alex's sake. It's a bit ironic because throughout the interview I conducted with Jane, we chatted quite a bit about the recent Colleen Ballinger situation, another YouTuber accused of grooming her underage fans. And it became a topic of conversations partly because Jane has been closely following the story and is a big fan of Adam McIntyre, one of Colleen's alleged victims who has been very outspoken about her wrongdoings. And in that particular case, when we've talked about it, she is able to objectively recognize inappropriate behavior from an adult. But unfortunately, she's got too many feelings wrapped up in this instance and wants to protect Alex at all costs. And this is why I and everyone else involved with this situation feel that the proof of Alex's misconduct needs to be made public, even if it goes against Jane's wishes right now. Make no mistake, continuing on and sharing Jane's story without her sickens me to my core. As a victim myself, it feels foul, because the last thing I ever wanted to do was further violate a victim's or remove their autonomy. However, this has grown bigger than one singular person, and people need to know about this. They need to know what Alex has done and make an informed decision on whether they want to support him or not, especially with much of his fan base still being underage. I'm aware that many people may strongly disagree with this decision to proceed with the video, and I completely understand and respect that viewpoint. So likewise, I hope everyone understands and respects the position we were in, choosing whether or not we would allow any potential further abuse to happen and more alleged victims to be harmed. We truly believe we've made the best decision for everyone involved under these circumstances.
At this point in time, members of the Yandere Simulator team started withdrawing their support of the project or their contributions entirely. Members of the team like Michaela Laws, the voice actor of Yandere-chan across the past 10 years, have completely disassociated from the project, with Yandere-chan's voice actor stating, "In terms of my voicing Yandere-chan, I am right now in a state of mourning. I've voiced her and others in the game for almost 10 years, and my contributions to the project are almost innumerable. I walked in a volunteer, loyal only to the project's development and completion. I did not join to be a defender or arbiter of anyone's actions outside of the project." I think it speaks volumes that people like this have never left the team until now. I think it just drives home how severe this situation is. This brings us quite nicely to YandereDev's response, titled "I'm sorry," posted on September the 25th. Where YandereDev would say the following: "You've probably heard some really concerning stuff over the last few days. You might have seen a video that has left you feeling worried, disappointed, and wondering what I have to say for myself. There's a part of me that wants to say, no, you don't understand. The video was edited in an extremely dishonest and misleading way, blah 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 blah. But no, I'm not going to focus on that. There's a part of me that wants to do what I usually do, and type out a massive essay where I over-explain absolutely every single detail about the situation, provide context to absolutely everything, go point by point down the list of every possible fact that can make the situation easier to understand. But no, I'm not going to do that. This isn't a blog post about how, actually, you see, I didn't really do anything all that bad. If you consider all the facts, I'm just gonna take accountability and own up to a really huge mistake that I've made. A few months back, a fan of the game DM'd me and wanted to chat. I normally just turn fans away and tell them that I'm busy, but in this case, the fan seemed really funny and interesting, so I agreed to talk. After around 2 months, I agreed to do a voice chat with her. Right off the bat, she let me know that she was 16 at the time. At the time, I didn't even perceive this as a problem. What do I care what her age is? She's just a funny fan of the game who wants to talk to me. This is no big deal. I rationalized to myself that it was fine. We talked for a while and eventually I started feeling really comfortable speaking to her. I started talking to her the same way I would speak to any of my other friends, like she was one of the guys. I made the same type of vulgar jokes that I would make when voice chatting with my other friends. This was an absolutely unacceptable mistake. Just because I felt really comfortable speaking to her does not make it okay. That's no excuse, not in the slightest. Occasionally, she would say something flirty towards me. Most of the time, I would shut that down immediately and refuse to reciprocate. However, there were times where I didn't shut down and let her talk to me that way without stopping her. Obviously, it goes without saying that this was not okay. This was at the point in time where I should have instantly disengaged and ended all contact with her. In any interaction between an adult and a minor, it is the adult's responsibility to put an immediate stop to any inappropriate behavior. There is absolutely no excuse for tolerating this as if it was okay. At some point, she started recording our conversations so that she could share my jokes with her friends. However, one of her friends interpreted my remarks as showing interest in her. They convinced her that I was trying to and that she should release all of her recordings to expose me. Her friend pressured her into providing the recordings to a drama YouTuber who began producing a video about the situation. A preview of the video revealed that the intention of the video would be to characterize me as a representing clips of the conversation that sounded explicit. Obviously, it doesn't matter how the recordings were made public because the entire situation never should have been allowed to happen in the first place. I'm just explaining why such a video even exists. Watching the recordings of the way I interacted with her has been mortifying to me. I keep thinking, I actually did that, and you goddamn idiot, whenever I'm reminded of something inappropriate I said in a conversation with her. I'm not going to spend a million years belaboring this point, but I want you to know that I have been kicking myself non-stop since this situation happened. It was foolish, extremely damn foolish, for me to think to myself that it was possible to rationalize an adult becoming friends with a minor, because no matter what the adult's intentions are in the beginning, there are so many potential things that can go wrong involving an adult and a minor alone together that the scenario should have never been allowed to happen in the first place. Over the years, a lot of people have contacted me telling me they look up to me, that they admire me, that I inspired them. Right now, I'm thinking about all of the people who ever said those words to me, and I realize that my actions have completely invalidated their words. Someone who makes this kind of mind-numbingly stupid mistake is not admirable or inspiring. I let the fans down, I keep saying to myself, over and over. Years of trying my best to prove that I'm not the bad guy that people say I am, and then I go and screw up so badly that I've retroactively vindicated some of the hate that has been directed at me. It's ironic. I've always tried so hard to disprove the hateful remarks that people make about me by doing the opposite of what they expect of me. At every turn, I try my absolute best to disprove every ignorant and hateful false accusation that people make about me. And now, look what I've gone and done. Instead of doing everything in my power to disprove the allegations, I made some remarks that sounded really questionable. I'm not even gonna say it only sounds bad because it's out of context. If only you had the context, you'd understand how it wasn't that bad. I'm just gonna own up to this one. The fact that it even happened at all, regardless of the context, is bad. There is no excuse. It's one thing to make a stupid mistake that results in self-humiliation. It's another to make a mistake that affects all the people that associate with me. However, it's a mistake on an entirely different level to make a mistake that involves an inappropriate interaction with a minor. At this point in time, it is difficult to determine exactly how much this is going to impact the development of Yandere Simulator. If I have to replace huge numbers of assets, hundreds of voice-acted lines, for example, I won't lie, that's going to be a really bad setback. I really only have myself to blame for it, though. For what it's worth, I'd like to make you aware that the fan I spoke to has expressed her feelings on the situation. You can find her post here. I feel like it's going to take a really long time for me to forgive myself for such a stupid mistake, but as a first step, I've donated $1,000 to RAIN, an organization that provides care and benefits to survivors of abuse. I know that it doesn't instantly wash away my bad decisions, but I hope it demonstrates that I'm willing to do whatever necessary to begin atoning for my mistakes. I'd like to apologize to my volunteers, to my fans, and to anyone who has ever called themselves my friend. I am truly and sincerely sorry. Actions speak louder than words though, so I'm going to try my hardest to grow as much as I can from this and make absolutely sure that nothing even remotely similar to this ever happens in the future. I have so many issues with this blog post, I do not even know where to begin. He keeps bringing up this idea that he could debunk a lot of this by saying that the video was edited in a dishonest way, or that a lot of the situation lacked context, and if you had all the facts it would be better, but he says he's not going to do that. Though I think it's important to note that he is still making a defense for himself by saying this. If he wasn't going to do anything like that, he wouldn't have brought up this idea that he could have done it, but he's not going to, because it still implicitly implies that he could disprove some of this or provide more context to this that would make it more okay. He's just choosing not to. I think that it really undermines the apology he's trying to make here. I also think him using language like really huge mistake I've made, bad decision, and extremely damn foolish, lack an understanding of how severe this situation actually is. These are not mistakes, foolish, or bad decisions. These are intentional actions by a 35-year-old man that come across as incredibly concerning, and understandably, people consider this behavior to be predatory. He waters down his comments to just vulgar jokes that he would make when voice chatting with other friends, but that isn't the case. He was continuously making inappropriate comments, not just jokes. He brings up that she would say flirty things towards him, and most of the time he would shut it down and refuse to reciprocate. However, there were some times where he didn't shut it down and he let her talk to him that way without stopping her. The problem is that he was also making flirty comments back. He presents this in a way as if the minor was making all of the advances and he had no involvement in that, as if his only mistake was not stopping the conversation. But his mistake was also being entirely involved in the conversation and saying inappropriate comments on his own behalf. He brings up how the victim's friend apparently pressured the victim into making the situation public, but he doesn't talk about the fact that when the situation became public, he pressured and manipulated the victim into trying to take the video down and get this situation to die before it became public. He was incredibly coercive, but his response to all of that isn't brought up at all here, as if he just wants to pretend that that didn't happen and hopes that people won't read into the situation far enough to become aware of that fact. I think it's important to bring up that he discusses the recordings of the ways he interacted with her and how mortifying they've been. However, he then immediately states that he's not going to spend a million years belaboring the point. I think you should actually detail what was said within those conversations, and I think that the reason he chose not to is because he knows that if he actually talked about what was said, it would dig him a grave way deeper than he could ever possibly crawl out of. I think it's incredibly embarrassing for him to make all of these comments about his fans and the people he inspired, saying that someone who makes this kind of mind-numbingly stupid mistake is not admirable or inspiring. "I let the fans down" is a phrase he uses within this blog post, which I feel misses the mark so severely because you should be thinking about the victim you hurt right now. I don't believe I see a single apology to her within this entire blog post. It's more an apology to the audience and his community for letting them down. It's almost comical that he brings up that it's difficult to determine how much it'll impact Yandere Simulator. I think it is comical that he would even begin to discuss how this may impact the development of Yandere Simulator, as if that is even in the equation anymore. He completely has himself to blame for it, and I would be shocked if anyone was willing to support this project following this point. He should wipe his hands clean of Yandere Simulator and never work on this game again. Sell it or do whatever you want with it, but do not work on this project any further because you have clearly shown that you cannot be trusted with the power you have been given. I also think it's interesting that he highlights the victim's response that comes across as if they were coerced by him into making this response and defends him instead of actually talking about the situation. It's a very one-sided response that I feel is a major flip from how the victim initially felt about the situation. His donation towards a charity at the end feels like a vain attempt to hopefully water down the amount of backlash he gets by showing that he's done something to change or improve, but I feel like it rings hollow. It's almost as if the donation was made as a cheap excuse to get away from the situation without properly tackling or responding to it. And I hope that this is the final blog post he makes and there's never anything following this, because this is absolutely disgusting. It's an embarrassing response, and I'm shocked that he would ever publicize it. With that being said, that's the entire situation for you, and I hope that it gives you the context needed so that you can understand what went on, why it was a problem, and will hopefully now have the full context needed to remove your support from Yandere Simulator or further spread word about the situation. If this video helped you be informed about the situation, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out my other social media. With that being said, I've been HarleyTBS. I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully I never have to talk about Yandere Simulator again, and peace.